All right, so it's recording now.
Okay. Be good.
Yes. Okay, so what we have to do is discuss what we would like for if we had to present parents' rights to our teachers in a workshop. What would we want them to know, and how would we go about presenting it to them?
Okay.
From an EC's perspective and an administrator's perspective. Am I right, Jerica?
Yes.
Okay.
I think not only parents, but a lot of the teachers as well don't really understand parents' rights, especially if you don't have the experience, or like myself, I maybe went to maybe 2 IEP meetings, and maybe one with the 504, parents weren't really required to come. They would do it over the phone, or we would have a meeting without the parent, which is always confusing to me, that we have a meeting without the parent, and then you give the paper home to the child, and the child takes it home. The parent might read it, send it back, and that's supposed to suffice. So, it's all been kind of a blur to me. The only thing that I know, I'm feeling that parents, should know, is like pretty much the chain of command and what some of these abbreviations mean. They need to know what's in their own child's IEP and 504 plans before they say, I had one parent come up and say, well, y'all need to do this and do this with my son. You need to do this. Y'all need to do this. And we're like, we've been doing this for 3 years. It's part of his IEP. They need to know actually what's in it.
Well, I mean, I think especially with the program, Exceptional Children's Program, is I see it professionally as a service, but at the same time, it's not just a school service. Because in understanding the needs of the child, it's like a community effort. And sometimes the parent not coming, there's a real emphasis on getting the parent involved with these. I mean, you have to document the efforts to contact the parent. And that's one of the reasons I feel like that effort is made, because sometimes the parents don't understand, what the full understanding of what the type of support we're trying to put in the classroom. And I think that's having the meeting, the need to schedule the meeting, and then following through with the meeting is what's needed, for the child. And sometimes it's not necessarily, the parent may not understand that process, because even without that parental support, the child still needs the services.
Yeah, and some of the services, some of the child might not need. So a lot of parents, I don't think they know that they can disagree with the decision. Like, you don't have to agree with that. You don't have to agree just because it's there. You know what I mean?
That's a true statement, man. A true point there. I know with my own experience this year, we had my daughter has a 504 plan because she has a seizure disorder and migraines. And even though the teachers felt that she didn't need some of her accommodations, me as her mother, I disagreed with them. So I argued the point that I disagreed with them. And we had to call the EC director in on it to have their vote about what the law actually said. Because they were like, they don't want to give it to her. They don't want to give her the accommodation. They didn't want to do this. And so as the team, I did get overruled and the accommodations got taken away. But now that we've gone through the testing and her scores dropped because they removed her accommodation, I've been able to go back and say, okay, this is what happened the year before with the accommodations in place. Go away based on what you recommended. Now I've gone back to her doctor. Her doctor agreed with me. Now you're taking a professional physician's recommendation. Now we're going to put them back in place. As the parent, I can request that meeting be redone. And those accommodations have to come back into play now. because I have the data to back it up that the year before when the accommodations were there, she did well. You did try, I did listen, you took them away. She didn't do well. And her doctor has now come in and spoken and said they agree that they need them. I think a lot of times our parents don't realize how valuable they actually have a voice, and that voice does play a part. And they feel like, hey, well, the administration says this, the teacher said this. Well, I don't have anything else I can do. I don't have a leg to stand on. But they really, truly do have a voice, and they do have a say in what happens with the child if there's a true need.
Yeah. Well, I think the intent of the meeting, if it's followed through, and that's one reason I feel the support and there's a need for it. The mother or the parent can still disagree.
Right.
Even though, and you can document that, as to why you feel like that's not. But then as a team, the team can make a team decision.
Right.
But you always, and I think that's something that's so important about giving a copy of that handbook to the parent. And this is especially true with parents that may not have very good English in terms of communication with the team itself. And we make an effort to try to get that type an interpreter, and I think that's real important for them. And I also try to follow through with whether any concerns, asking the question, are there any concerns that were discussed that what are there any concerns that the parent has that were not discussed?
Right.
So that sort of opens up that rule, and also having that documentation, that this was what it was in place, and this is how this child was successful in this area, and now we're looking at a situation where he or she was not as successful, because it's all about the success of the child. In the long run.
I think a lot of our issue though is too in our area with our school is we have the lack of parental support. They don't come and they don't understand what's going on, and that makes it hard. So I think if we are able to get out to the teachers the importance of having parental involvement and what the rights are to that parent, if we could get our teachers to understand that involvement, that would be a big help in getting them to come more, because you think about teachers are your first line. They're the ones that hit those parents first.
Yeah, that's true.
They're the ones who's going to get to them first. They're the ones going to see them first because they come to the classroom. They are the ones that should be making that phone call home or emailing or however you contact that parent. Your teachers are the first one.
Yeah, I think even in combination, have the teacher called and the parent called. And the teacher called, both teachers. Because usually you used to think of like the case management part, and don't want them to feel like we're not supporting what that child needs. Because one thing, when I think about the question about what the administrator would need to making sure the administrator knows in the meeting, doing what's in the best interest of that child, even when there's pushback on what this will be easier, but what does this child need?
Right.
And I think that can really get lost, and it's easier if the parent is not there to push what is the best interest of the child. It's still the administrator's responsibility to make sure that child has what it needs to be successful.
I thought it was interesting that there's some cases where you don't need a parent's consent to reevaluate a child, that you can, and then there's also times where consent is required. So, for example, if your district feels like a child needs to be reevaluated and it took the reasonable steps to reevaluate your child, and you don't respond, or you don't meet, or you don't show up, or you don't call, or you don't sign a paper, it can do it on its own. And if they reevaluate your child and see that they don't need the services, like your kid can get kicked out of the program as long as the district is not violating its obligations, the reevaluation process. But there are times that consent is required. So like if your kid for example, if your kid is starting to score well, like I teach an HAG class, there's a child that is, I think it's called he's dyslexic and he has dysgraphia. He's dyslexic when it comes to like seeing things on paper, but he can read from a computer screen very well. And dysgraphia, would never heard of it before, but his handwriting is horrible, like almost not legible, but he's brilliant and bright. Well, I give a lot of my tests online, like a lot of them, because it's instant. Your score is instant. I give you the test, you get it back immediately. Feedback is immediate, and it comes with explanation as well. He's done well. So it's looking like, yeah, he's scoring pretty well. However, I'm not giving him paper tests. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So it's looking like you don't need these services anymore. You're scoring pretty well. You used to have CFs, and now you're getting B's and A's, you know, but really, what's going on? So that's why, like, as a parent, you need to know what's going on and come to these meetings so you can see examples of student work, like what's going on, what's different this year than last year. You know, you learn something new about your child every year, and that could also be a new accommodation. Like my child, these computer screens and taking these tests on computers, you can change the colors on the background. Some kids see better and for some reason can concentrate better when the screen is green.
Yeah.
And the letters are white.
Yeah,
you know.
But see,
yeah.
I was just going to add to that, which is a good observation. But see, in some settings, if that child were to move to a district that did not have access to that as an assessment, you still would need to have that as an observation and, you know, as part of his IEP, because he may move into a district that has very little technology.
Yeah.
And if he struggles with the pen and paper, or, I mean, you know, that may be something that may affect his success. So knowing that and understanding that, I think it's sort of, because like even with some of the IEPs we write, we said, you know, it includes, like we started this year with some assessments being done online. The previous year, we didn't do that. So without that, and see, the IEPs are written like a year in advance. So that would be something that would, you know, based on your understanding and knowledge of that child, make sure all of that is included, you know, if that was determined in that academic year, that was an assessment that he would have to be.
He had to be provided with like access to a computer. He carries around a special, like, it's a laptop, but he has a certain way that he can send work, or he can, I don't know what he does, but it's like pretty much immediate. Like, he can send his work to you. He can type. He can just turn everything electronically, and especially now with Google Drives and Google Form and Google this, everything is instant.
Which is good.
You know, but like you said, if he goes to another district, or, you know, the computer dies, or, you know, that needs to be written in stone. Like, it needs to be like, hey, this kid needs to do this in every class, not just math class, or, you know.
Or even, and that's a good idea. And as part of the team, look at, I mean, that's why the IEP meeting is so important, to look at, you know, each class, because usually, depending on what the needs of that child, are, would determine how that accommodation could support his success in the other settings. Because even when we write up settings, we said, you know, we have to put accommodations in everything. Even like I had a child that had trouble with noises, and like in the auditorium, or like if there was an assembly, all of that. Some kids just have trouble like transitioning. All of that needs to be put, you know, discussed, put in place, and put, like, if he becomes, you know, adapt to what, you know, have a backup plan to remove him. If you're removing him, you know, what's the behaviors that would be identified? How long would that child need to be removed? So understanding that there's, you know, each setting requires specific instructions.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing for administrators to know too, because some parents don't understand. First of all, you can't talk about a child's IEP with another parent. There's an incident that happened in school where a child who just happened to have an IEP got into it got into a fight or a physical altercation with another child, and the parent wanted to demand, well, what you gonna do to this other kid? Or I heard that kid can't get suspended because he has an IEP. What in the world? How do you know that? Number one. But I mean, like, that was new to me. Like, you can't get suspended because you have an IEP. What? Where does that come from? I've never heard of that one.
Always going to be. You're always going to have. You have to be careful with what you're discussing. You're right. Because of the rights of the child and the parent and the other student too. But at the same time, kids
that privacy.
For the main thing is that there's an understanding of expected behaviors based on the classroom setting or the school environment. So that's a whole different level. There is a degree of privacy, and
right,
they're real strict on what you can discuss.
Yeah, and what you said about the kid having noises, like
conversations.
Yeah, like if the kid is in the auditorium and he has a breakdown and he starts to scream or kick something because of the noises, you know what I mean? His reprimand, him being reprimanded is going to be different than a child who just does that just because he's having a bad day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and people don't understand that, and they see it as, well, that's not fair. If you're in the same school, you should be able to, the same, and I think as administrators, we have to know, what we need to do about situations like that, and and to be able to identify, like, hey, don't scream and yell at this kid, he can't help it. You need to know who's in your building, and you know what I mean, making sure that the teachers that are around these kids know how to handle them or are equipped to it. So obviously this child is in this auditorium with all of this noise, which this never happened. This is just like a made-up situation. But the teachers don't even know that this kid has this problem. You got this child not being served right now because when they go to social studies or science, they don't have IEP. They don't have an EC teacher in Forsyth County. They have them in math and they have them in social studies. I mean, math and language arts.
Well, you may not have an inclusion, but anytime, like with EC, anybody that serves that child has to have a copy of that IEP.
Yep.
Everybody. So everyone would all the teachers would need to know what challenges or what type of accommodations that child would need. Because, like, I'm just using this as an example, like read aloud, small groups, that type of thing. But I think, one of the reasons that there was been such a push as administrators, as a school, to put children in situations because they would need to be able to grow and develop skills that will help them, because they're, once they leave school, because they're not always going to be in the school environment. And also the students that may not have those challenges will need to know that you may have a person that you will meet socially or, in a job setting that may have skills or may have, behaviors that you have not seen before, and to know, that sometimes there are situations where, that's going to happen. And I think kids have a much easier time working through it and understanding it more so than adults do. And that's just just an observation. They're more patient. But the main thing is, if you know that, and the students know that, learning that what expected and unexpected behaviors are, for that child may be different than, the other child. And that's true. If you're going to have something that is going to be a little different for that child.
But bringing it back to, I think what we were mainly focusing on tonight was the fact that what would we do in a workshop, and bringing it back to what we would need to make sure that the teachers know parents' rights. And as far as that go, I think one of the main focuses we would do at the beginning of the school year with the teachers, I think what I've seen over the years is that talking about teachers not knowing, Jerica, you brought up the fact that your social studies and your science teachers don't have that extra help. I also believe that we find that sure your EC teachers are mandated by law to give those teachers, every teacher that serves that or teaches that child in whatever capacity, they have to have that copy. You may hand that teacher that copy. They take that copy and they put it in a file. They put it in the filing cabinet, and they don't ever look at that thing again. So I think as well as going along with teaching the parent rights piece of it, that also needs to be included in the workshop. That EC teacher comes in and they say, okay, you have these. Do you have these students this year that have these 504s, that have these IEPs? Let's sit down, whether you're a new teacher, whether you're a veteran teacher, whether you've got 2 years under your belt, it doesn't matter. I think that they should sit down at the beginning of the year and they say, okay, I need you to look at these IEPs, these 504s. You need to go through them. We're going to sit here for the next 30 minutes, let you look at these, and you get to ask me questions right now about what these accommodations mean. Not only what they mean, but how does it affect me as a teacher in the classroom if I forget to give it? What effect is it going to have on me in the law and in the long run? How is it going to affect me if I don't do it? Am I going to be in some kind of violation by law? And then what right is it of the parent to come in and say to me? Because again, that brings back the parent right. The parent then has the right to come at me because I'm in violation of that child's IEP or 504. So when we're talking about the parental right piece, that again brings it back home. If that teacher has never, if they're coming, especially if they're coming from out of state and they never have seen a 504 or an IEP, they don't know what it looks like. If you just talk about parental rights, but they don't know what the 504 accommodations mean, you're still going to be lost. So I think those two things kind of go hand in hand, that they need to see those 504 accommodations and IEPs. And then also be explained, okay, if you don't follow it, not only are you breaking the law in violation there, but these parents have the right to come in and do da-da-da-da-da, whatever it may be.
Right.
And they need to understand that it's not just for testing.
Right.
Like, it's all year.
It is in the classroom. If they say they get read aloud, you got to do read aloud for your regular assignments. You got to do it for projects. You got to do it for when you're teaching, when you're giving new information. You know, read aloud is read aloud. If it means that they get there, if like I had one year, I had a student that got enlarged print on their worksheets. So we had to make printouts for that one child. I had to do everything separate for that one child, and it had to be 3 times as big as a regular worksheet. I had another child one year that her accommodation said that she could only get 2 problems per page. Well, I had to accommodate that to her. But had I not taken the time to read her IEP, I would have known it. And that parent could have come in and attacked me when she went home with a worksheet with 25 problems on 1 page.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think when we're talking about doing a workshop and introducing parent rights to our teachers at the beginning of the year or middle of the year, whatever, I think we have to teach all of it. I think they're coming hand to hand. I think you need to not only just teach the parental rights side, but I think you need to make sure the teachers understand what the kids are getting, what the accommodations are, and why they're there.
Yeah, I agree with that. And especially because it's so much, being able to answer questions, ask questions, have those questions answered, and also give an opportunity, even though you've seen and you know the language, that IEP or IEPs are written specifically for that one child.
Right.
I have never seen an IEP that is across the board for every child.
Right.
So it's individual, and that's what the beginning word is. This individual educational plan.
Right.
So, and I think one thing is there to support the teacher, is there to support the child, is there to support the parent. So I think if nothing else, I think make sure that the administrators understand it is for support. You know, as a teacher, it's all about success for both the child, the student, and the school.
Right.
And
that was a good conversation. You need to come to all our Zoom meetings.
I'm telling you. I told you it's good. I'm telling you.
But I love kids. I understand, sometimes when they do their best, it may not be what others evaluate as top, But if you're taking a child that's learning every day, that's moving forward every day, and you want them to be happy learning, they're going to perform for you, So, and that's what you want. You want them to be happy learning.
This is her second career, Jerica. This is not her first career. Ask her what she did for the first part of her.
Uh-oh. What did you do?
I was a social worker.
Oh. We're social workers too, I guess. But you have to be a social worker.
Yep.
Some of these stories are so sad.
They are.
You're still a social worker.
Her first year in, when she first began teaching, she was my partner. Her and I did an inclusion class for only 7th and 8th grade EC, and we co-taught, and that's all we did for the entire year.
Yeah.
We co-taught together. And I'm telling you, we
were great.
An unstoppable team. And then they broke us up, and they took us apart. And we have been devastated ever since.
I think EC teachers are some of the best teachers because you have to teach to the whole brain of the child. And you have to teach parents how to understand their child's brain and how they think. And you have to teach the kid how to understand their own brain and how they think. And then you got to make sure your brain has the patience for all the different kinds of ways the kids think.
Yes.
You got to teach some of these principles too, because
you got that right.
They don't know.
That's right.
But I mean, and one thing is always understanding, like this type of education, this type of involvement. We're in 3 separate places. We're having a conversation.
Yep. Hey, you can do this in your classroom.
Yes,
with your kids.
But see, when I went to school, when I got my bachelor's degree, none of this was available.
Mm-hmm. Your kids at home, and the kids at home, and they can't get to school, or you got a substitute, you got surgery. Put that TV on in class. Turn to page 23. I see you. Put that pencil down. Stop throwing paper.
That's right.
And that's good. And that's good. But see that's one of my teaching philosophies is you can't teach today's children the way we were taught years ago with yesterday's knowledge.
You can't.
And you're going to have children that are EC that have services in an EC that will be successful if we can teach them with accommodations where they are, so that when they leave the educational system, they will have tools to be successful.
I've actually seen the kid unlock, like right before my eyes, like, oh, that's what that is the whole time. That's what multiplication is. And I'm like, yeah. Oh, you just keep adding the same number over. Oh, and it's just like, you just get this like 7th grade, like.
Oh, good.
But he unlocked, and it just like once he unlocked, it just everything just kind of like, oh, and that. Oh, I get it. I understand everything now. So.
Yep.
All right, y'all. It's getting ready to cut me off because it says we hit our limit.
Okay. We made it.
Okay. Well, let me add this too. Listen, because with EC, it's also important for the student, even after all of this, to be their best advocate, especially as they get older.
Okay.
All right. See you later, Jerica.
Okay. Bye.